The necklace was gone, and Elena Morales was already being blamed for it before anyone asked her a single question. "Search her bag," Vivian Cross said, her voice cutting through the marble hallway like a blade. Two security guards moved toward Elena before she could even set down the tray she was carrying. What's happening?" Elena's hands trembled as the tray tilted, a glass sliding dangerously close to the edge. She caught it just in time. "Ms. Cross, what is this about?" "The Ashford sapphire necklace is missing." Vivian's eyes were cold, almost triumphant. "And you were the last person seen near the private wing." "I wasn't anywhere near," Elena's voice cracked. "I was in the kitchen all morning. Ask Nina. Ask anyone." Nobody spoke. The other staff members stood frozen along the hallway, eyes down, hands folded, terrified to say a word. Elena searched their faces, desperate for someone, anyone, to back her up. Nobody moved. "The security footage shows you entering that hallway at 9:47 this morning," Vivian said, holding up a tablet like a weapon. "Explain that." Elena stared at the screen. The figure on camera did look like her. Same height, same uniform, but something was wrong. She knew, in her bones, she hadn't been there. "That's not. I don't understand. I was in the kitchen. I can prove it." "You'll have plenty of time to prove things," Vivian said, already turning away. "Mr. Ashford has been informed. He's authorized your termination, effective immediately." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. 6 years. 6 years of scrubbing floors before sunrise, of staying late when guests needed extra care, of remembering every employee's birthday, every child's name, every small kindness that made a house feel like a home. 6 years erased in one sentence from a man who wasn't even in the country. "Jonathan authorized this? He didn't even talk to me?" Her voice broke on his name. She never called him Jonathan, always Mr. Ashford. But something about the injustice made the formality collapse. "Mr. Ashford trusts my judgment," Vivian said. "Pack your things. Security will escort you out. If you're feeling your chest tighten right now, that's exactly where this story wants you. Because what happens next will make you angrier before it makes you hopeful. Hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because you are not going to want to miss how this ends." Elena walked back to the small staff room where she kept her belongings, her legs numb, her mind spinning. 5-year-old Lucas was waiting there, coloring at a little table the staff had set up for him years ago. He looked up, his crayon frozen mid-stroke. "Mommy? Why are you crying?" She hadn't even realized tears were falling. She wiped her face quickly, forcing a smile that fooled no one. "We're going home early today, baby. Did I do something wrong?" His small voice cracked with worry. No, sweetheart. Never. You didn't do anything wrong." She knelt down and pulled him into her arms, breathing in the smell of his hair, trying to steady herself. Mommy has to find a new job. That's all." "Why?" She didn't have an answer that wouldn't terrify him. "Grab your jacket, okay? The blue one." As they walked through the grand foyer one last time, past the marble floors she had polished 1,000 times, past the staff who wouldn't meet her eyes, Elena felt something break inside her chest. Not just sadness, something closer to disbelief. She had given this house everything, and in 15 minutes, it had thrown her away like she was nothing. Nina, the young housemaid, watched from behind a column, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run after Elena. She wanted to scream that this wasn't right, that she'd seen something strange that morning, that Vivian had been in that hallway too. But fear held her feet in place. Vivian had made it clear more than once what happened to people who talk too much. Elena and Lucas walked out the front gates carrying 2 bags. That was all that was left of 6 years. "Mommy, is that man going to say sorry?" Lucas asked, looking back at the enormous house shrinking behind them. "What man, baby?" "Mr. Ashford. The nice one. The one who gave me the card." Elena stopped walking. "What card, Lucas?" Lucas's eyes went wide, like he'd said something he wasn't supposed to. He clutched his blue jacket tighter. "Nothing. Never mind." Elena crouched down, gently lifting his chin. "Lucas, what card?" He hesitated, his lower lip trembling. "He said it was a secret. For emergencies only." Something flickered in Elena's chest. Not quite hope. Not yet. Just a question mark hanging in the cold afternoon air. They kept walking. Neither of them knew that the small card hidden in Lucas's jacket pocket was about to become the most important object either of them had ever owned. 3 weeks earlier, Jonathan Ashford had been rushing through the estate's East Wing, late for a call with investors in Singapore, when he dropped a folder of confidential documents in the hallway, papers scattered everywhere. He was already dialing, already stressed, already halfway to being furious about the delay, when a small voice stopped him. "Mr. Ashford, wait. You dropped these." Lucas had gathered every single page, careful not to bend them, and held them up with both hands like he was presenting a trophy. Jonathan had paused. Really paused, for the first time in weeks. He looked down at this small boy who had clearly gone out of his way to help a man he barely knew. "You didn't have to do that, kid. My mommy says you should always help people," Lucas said simply. "Even busy people." Something about that had cracked through Jonathan's exhaustion. He'd knelt down, taken the papers, and on impulse pulled a small card from his jacket. An emergency contact card he gave to almost no one, reserved for his most trusted security personnel. "This is a special number," he told Lucas. "Only for real emergencies. Can you keep a secret?" Lucas had nodded solemnly, eyes wide with the weight of the responsibility. "Good man." Jonathan had smiled, ruffled his hair, and walked away, already forgetting the exchange as his phone buzzed again. He had no idea that small card would end up being the only thing standing between an innocent woman's destroyed life and the truth. If this story already has you hooked, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who need to see how far one small act of kindness can travel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because part 2 is where everything starts to unravel. Back in the tiny apartment in Yonkers, Elena sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at a stack of bills she couldn't pay. Rent, electric, Lucas's school fees. Her hands shook as she did the math over and over, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. "Mommy!" Lucas stood in the doorway in his pajamas, clutching his blue jacket like a security blanket. "Are we going to be okay?" Elena forced herself to smile, though her heart was breaking. "Of course we are, baby. Mommy always figures it out." But that night, after Lucas fell asleep, Elena sat alone in the dark kitchen and cried harder than she had in years. 6 years of loyalty, thrown away in 15 minutes, and nobody, not one person, had stood up for her. She didn't know yet that somewhere across the world, a 5-year-old's memory of a small paper card was about to change absolutely everything. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of rejection. Elena applied to every housekeeping agency within 20 miles, every hotel, every private staffing service she could find. Each time, the answer was the same. "I'm sorry, Ms. Morales. The position's been filled. We'll keep your resume on file. Unfortunately, we've decided to go another direction." By the 4th day, Elena began to suspect something. The rejections came too fast, too clean, like doors slamming shut before she even finished knocking. She called an old coworker, someone who'd left the Ashford estate years ago, and now worked at a staffing agency in Manhattan. "Elena, I have to be honest with you," the woman said quietly over the phone. "Someone from the estate called ahead. They said you were let go for theft. Agencies talk to each other." "I'm sorry." Elena's stomach dropped. "Vivian did that?" "I don't know who exactly, but your name is flagged everywhere now." Elena hung up the phone and sat perfectly still for a long moment, staring at the wall. It wasn't enough to fire her. Vivian wanted to make sure she could never work again. "Why would she do this to me?" Elena whispered to the empty kitchen. "What did I ever do to her?" That night, the refrigerator held half a carton of eggs and some rice. Elena split what little they had, giving Lucas the bigger portion, telling him she wasn't hungry. He didn't believe her. 5-year-olds notice more than adults think, but he ate quietly, watching his mother with worried eyes. "Mommy, you're sad again," he said softly. I'm okay, Mijo. Just tired. You cry when you think I'm sleeping. I hear you. Elena's throat tightened. She reached across the table and took his small hand. I'm sorry you hear that. I want to help you, Lucas said, his voice suddenly firm, almost fierce in the way only a child's determination can be. I don't like seeing you cry. That was the moment something shifted in him. Later that night, while his mother washed the few dishes they had left, Lucas crept to his room and dug through his closet until he found it. The blue jacket, folded at the bottom, exactly where he'd hidden it weeks ago. He reached into the inside pocket and pulled out a small white card, slightly bent at the corner. Jonathan Ashford, private line, emergency only. He stared at the number for a long time. He didn't fully understand what emergency meant. Not really. But he knew his mother was crying every night. He knew they didn't have enough food. He knew the man who gave him this card had smiled at him, had called him kid, in a nice way, had said to help people even when you're busy. This felt like an emergency to him. There was an old backup phone in the kitchen drawer, one Elena kept charged in case of emergencies but rarely used since she couldn't afford much of a phone plan. Lucas had seen his mother use it before. He knew how to turn it on. He knew how to dial numbers, because his mother had taught him her own number in case he ever got lost. Quietly, carefully, his heart pounding in his small chest, Lucas dialed the number on the card. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Somewhere across the world, in a hotel suite overlooking the Singapore skyline, Jonathan Ashford was reviewing quarterly reports when his private emergency line buzzed. His head of security carried an identical line, his lawyer had one, a handful of trusted people had this number, people who only called when something was genuinely wrong. He frowned at the unfamiliar number and answered immediately. Ashford. Silence for a moment, then a small, uncertain voice. Hi, is this Mr. Ashford? Jonathan sat up straight. Who is this? It's Lucas. You gave me your card. You said only for emergencies. For a moment, Jonathan genuinely couldn't place the name. Then it clicked. The little boy in the hallway, the dropped documents, the card he'd handed over almost as an afterthought weeks ago. Lucas? How did you get this number? Wait, is everything all right? Are you safe? I'm okay, Lucas said quickly. But my mommy isn't okay. She cries every night and we don't have food and she got fired and it's not her fault. Mr. Ashford, she didn't take anything. I promise my mommy doesn't steal. She says stealing is wrong and she would never. Slow down, Lucas. Slow down. Jonathan's mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments. What's your mommy's name? Elena. Elena Morales. Every muscle in Jonathan's body went still. Elena. He knew that name. Vaguely, distantly, the way a man who traveled 200 days a year knew the names of people who kept his home running. He remembered approving her termination through a 2-line email from Vivian while sitting in an airport lounge, barely reading past the words, theft, and immediate dismissal. He hadn't asked a single question. He hadn't even paused. Lucas, I need you to put your mommy on the phone. Can you do that for me? There was a rustling sound, muffled voices in the background, and then a woman's voice, hesitant and confused. Hello? Who is this? Ms. Morales, this is Jonathan Ashford. Elena's breath caught audibly. Mr. Ashford? I don't understand. Why would Lucas call you? I'm so sorry, he must have. Ms. Morales, please. I need you to tell me exactly what happened the day you were let go. Everything. From the beginning. There was a pause. Elena's voice, when it came, was shaking, but steady enough to speak the truth she'd been carrying alone for days. I was in the kitchen the entire morning, Mr. Ashford. I have 3 co-workers who can confirm it, if they're not too afraid to speak. I never went near the private wing. The footage Ms. Cross showed everyone. I don't know how, but it wasn't me. I would never steal from you. Not after everything this job meant to me. Not after everything you and this family have done for us. If this moment gave you chills, that's your sign to hit like right now. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it before part 3, because this is where the investigation truly begins. Jonathan closed his laptop slowly, his quarterly reports forgotten. Ms. Morales, I'm going to ask you to do one thing for me. Stay by this phone. I'm postponing my meetings. Mr. Ashford, you don't have to. Nobody investigated this properly, he said, his voice hardening with something between guilt and resolve. I authorized your termination based on a 2-line email. I owe you an actual investigation. I'm calling Daniel Brooks right now. He hung up and immediately dialed his head of security, a former federal investigator who had never once given him a reason to doubt his instincts. Daniel, I need you to look into something. Quietly, thoroughly, and I don't care whose feelings get hurt in the process. What am I looking at? The Morales termination. Pull everything. Every log, every camera angle, every financial record for the estate over the last month. I have a feeling we got this very, very wrong. Daniel Brooks had spent 11 years as a federal investigator before Jonathan hired him, and in that time he'd learned one unshakable truth. People who were confident in their lies never wanted anyone to look too closely. The moment he pulled the security footage from the day of the theft, something felt off. He sat in the estate's security office at 2 in the morning, 3 monitors glowing in front of him, coffee going cold at his elbow. The footage showed a woman in a housekeeping uniform entering the private wing at 9:47 a.m., same build as Elena. Same dark hair pulled back. But when Daniel slowed the footage frame by frame, something caught his eye. That's not her gait, he muttered to himself. He pulled up older footage of Elena from the archive. Months of her walking those same halls, carrying trays, greeting guests. Her stride was quick, purposeful, slightly favoring her left side from an old knee injury she'd once mentioned to another staff member. The woman in the theft footage walked evenly. No favoring, no limp. Someone wanted this to look like her, Daniel said aloud. Someone who knew the uniform, knew the timing, but didn't know her body. He kept digging. The access logs were the next red flag. Only 3 people had badge clearance to the private wing that morning: Elena, Vivian, and a night security guard who'd clocked out at 6 a.m. But when Daniel cross-referenced the badge scanner data with the actual footage timestamp, the numbers didn't line up. The badge scan showing Elena's entry was logged at 9:44 a.m. The footage showed the woman entering at 9:47. A 3-minute gap that shouldn't have existed if the system was working correctly. Someone manually adjusted this, he said, pulling up the server logs. There it was, a back-end edit, timestamped 2 days after the incident, made from an internal terminal. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. This wasn't sloppy police work. This was deliberate. By morning, he had Jonathan on a video call, laptop propped open with 3 screens of evidence behind him. Sir, I need you to see this. Jonathan leaned forward, his coffee forgotten. Show me everything. The footage was edited. The badge logs were altered 2 days after Elena was fired. And that's not even the worst part. Daniel pulled up a new folder. I ran a financial background check on everyone with wing access standard protocol. Vivian Cross has $43,000 in gambling debt across 3 casinos. 2 loan defaults in the last 6 months. And 4 days after the necklace disappeared, an $11,000 deposit hit her personal account from an unlicensed jewelry broker in Queens. Jonathan felt something cold settle in his chest. She sold it. I believe so. I haven't confirmed the broker yet, but the timeline fits perfectly. She needed money. She had access. She had motive. And she had exactly the kind of desperation that makes people do reckless things. She fired an innocent woman to cover her own theft, Jonathan said, his voice low and dangerous. She destroyed Elena's reputation. She let a 5-year-old watch his mother get dragged out of the only home he'd ever known. There's more, Daniel said carefully. I started quietly asking around. Off the record. A few staff members opened up once they realized I wasn't reporting back to Vivian. And, sir, this isn't the first time Vivian's pushed someone out to protect herself. There's a pattern. Threats. Intimidation. People being told they'd lose their jobs if they ever spoke up about anything she did. One of the younger staff, Nina Patel, broke down crying when I asked her about the day Elena was fired. She said she saw Vivian near the private wing that morning. She was too scared to say anything. Jonathan sat back, running a hand down his face. How did I let this happen in my own house? You travel 200 days a year and you gave one woman total control, Daniel said, not unkindly, but honestly. That's not an accusation, sir. It's just the truth. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then he stood up abruptly. Get everything documented. Every log, every financial record, every witness statement. I want it airtight. What are you planning? I'm going to confront her in front of everyone. Every single person who watched Elena walk out those gates is going to watch the truth come out too. If you've been waiting for the villain to fall, comment justice below right now, because part 4 is exactly what you've been waiting for. And don't forget to like this video. It truly helps more people find these stories. Nina Patel hadn't slept properly in days. Guilt sat on her chest like a stone every night. The memory of Elena's face as she was escorted out replaying over and over. When Daniel Brooks had asked her directly what she'd seen that morning, something in her had finally cracked. I saw Miss Cross, she admitted, her voice trembling, tears sliding down her cheeks, near the private wing, before the necklace was reported missing. I didn't think anything of it at the time. She goes everywhere in this house. But then when Elena got blamed, I knew something was wrong. I was just so scared. Ms. Cross told all of us more than once what happens to people who cause problems. I have 2 younger siblings depending on this paycheck. I couldn't risk it. You're not in trouble, Daniel said gently. But I need you to tell Mr. Ashford exactly what you just told me. Nina wiped her face with shaking hands. Will Elena get her job back? I think, Daniel said. She's going to get a lot more than that. Word spread quietly through the estate over the next 2 days. Something was happening. Vivian noticed the shift immediately. The way staff avoided eye contact with her. The way whispered conversations stopped the moment she entered a room. She told herself it was paranoia. She told herself she'd covered her tracks perfectly. She had no idea Daniel Brooks had already built a file thick enough to end her career, her freedom, and every lie she told to survive. Meanwhile, in Yonkers, Elena sat by the phone Jonathan had asked her to keep close, staring at the peeling paint on her kitchen wall, not daring to hope for too much. Lucas sat beside her, coloring quietly, occasionally glancing up at his mother's face. Mommy, did I do a good thing? Calling him. Elena pulled her son into her lap and held him tight, tears finally falling. But different tears this time. Not the hopeless kind. Something closer to relief. You did the bravest thing anyone's ever done for me, baby. The bravest thing. The doors to the main hall burst open at exactly 10 in the morning, and every member of the Ashford estate staff felt the air change the second Jonathan walked in. Everyone, gather here. Now. His voice echoed off the marble, sharp enough that even the gardeners outside came in from the cold. Vivian appeared moments later, smoothing her blazer, a tight smile already forming on her face. Jonathan, you're back early. Is everything all right? No, he said flatly. Nothing has been all right since the day you fired Elena Morales. The room went silent. Vivian's smile flickered, just for a second, before she rebuilt it. Jonathan, we discussed this. The evidence was clear. I would never have terminated her without. Without what? Without a real investigation. Because there wasn't one. Jonathan's eyes were cold, unwavering. There was you, and a 2-line email, and my own inexcusable failure to ask a single question. I don't understand what's happening right now, Vivian said, her voice rising slightly, defensive. Then let me help you understand. Jonathan nodded to Daniel, who stepped forward with a tablet, projecting the footage onto the large screen mounted on the wall. This is the footage from the day of the theft, Daniel said, his voice calm and precise, the voice of a man who had said far worse things to far more dangerous people. Watch the walk. Now watch this. He pulled up archived footage of Elena from months prior, side by side. Notice the difference? Murmurs rippled through the staff. Vivian's face had gone pale. Elena has favored her left leg since a knee injury 2 years ago. Everyone who's worked with her for more than a week knows this. The woman in your footage doesn't limp at all. That proves nothing, Vivian snapped. but her voice cracked slightly. It proves someone impersonated her, Daniel continued, unbothered. And this, he pulled up the badge log data, proves the timestamp was manually altered 2 days after the incident, from an internal terminal registered to your office. The room erupted in hushed gasps. Vivian's hands trembled as she gripped the back of a chair. "You're twisting things," she said, but her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. This is a coordinated attack against me. Is it also a coordinated attack that shows $43,000 in gambling debt across 3 casinos? Jonathan stepped closer, his voice rising for the first time. Or an $11,000 deposit into your personal account 4 days after the necklace disappeared, from a jewelry broker with no license and a criminal record. That's private financial information. You had no right? I had every right. Jonathan's voice thundered through the hall, silencing her instantly. You destroyed an innocent woman's life. You let a 5-year-old boy watch his mother dragged out of this house like a criminal. You let him cry himself to sleep wondering what his mother did wrong, when she did nothing. Nothing, Vivian. Vivian's composure finally shattered. I needed the money. Do you understand what it's like to owe people who don't accept excuses? I panicked. I saw an opportunity and I took it. And Elena was convenient. She never fought back. She never fought back because she trusted this house. Jonathan cut her off, his voice raw with fury. She trusted me, and I failed her the moment I stopped asking questions and started assuming the worst about the one person in this house who never gave me a reason to doubt her. Nina Patel stepped forward suddenly, her voice shaking but audible. She threatened us. All of us. She told us if we ever spoke up about anything, we'd be fired too. That's why nobody said anything when Elena was walked out. More staff members nodded, murmuring in agreement. Years of silent fear finally breaking loose in one cathartic wave. Get her out of my house, Jonathan said quietly to Daniel. All the fire drained from his voice, replaced with something heavier. And call the authorities. The jewelry broker too. If you're feeling that wave of justice hit right now, comment finally below. And if you haven't smashed that like button yet, now's the moment, because what happens next is going to make you cry in the best way possible. Vivian was escorted out in silence, her protests falling on ears that no longer cared to listen. 2 other staff members, longtime accomplices who had helped cover for her over the years out of fear or bribery, were dismissed within the hour. The house exhaled. Jonathan stood alone in the grand hall for a long moment after everyone dispersed, staring at the space where Elena used to stand every morning, tray in hand, warm smile ready for whoever walked through the door. He thought about every conversation they'd never had. Every good morning he'd rushed past. Every year he'd let someone else run his household while he ran from meeting to meeting, building an empire and losing sight of the people who made his life function. He got in his car that afternoon and drove to Yonkers himself, no driver, no assistant, no entourage. Just him. Elena opened the door to find Jonathan Ashford standing on her cracked front step, hands in his coat pockets, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Mr. Ashford? Her voice was full of confusion, caution, and something else she didn't dare name yet. Ms. Morales. Elena. He said her name softly, like it mattered. I owe you an apology. Not the kind you say in passing. The real kind. Lucas appeared behind his mother, peeking around her leg. Mr. Ashford. You came. Jonathan crouched down to Lucas's level, his voice warm despite the weight of the moment. I did, buddy. Because of you. You saved your mom. Elena's eyes filled with tears as she watched the billionaire kneel on her broken front step, speaking to her son like he was the most important person in the world. Because in that moment, he was. Elena, I got it wrong, Jonathan said, standing back up, his voice thick with genuine remorse. I let someone else make a decision that should have taken 30 seconds of my attention to see through. I trusted the wrong person and doubted the right one. I am so sorry. Sorrier than I know how to say. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, tears streaming freely now. You believed her over 6 years of my work. 6 years, Mr. Ashford. I know, he said quietly, not defending himself, not making excuses. And I can't undo what happened. But I can promise you it will never happen again. Not to you. Not to anyone in that house. Elena stood in her doorway, arms wrapped tight around herself, staring at the man who had once signed off on destroying her life with barely a glance. Part of her wanted to slam the door. Part of her wanted to scream every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every rejected job application right back at him. But another part of her, the tired, honest part, just wanted to hear what he had to say. I'm not here to buy your forgiveness, Jonathan said, reading the conflict on her face. I know an apology doesn't erase what happened, but I want to make this right properly if you'll let me. Make it right how? Elena's voice wasn't cold, but it wasn't soft either. It was guarded, earned. I want you to come back, he said. Not to your old position. I want you to run the estate. Head of operations. Full authority over hiring, staff welfare, everything Vivian used to control, except this time with someone who actually deserves that trust. Elena let out a short, disbelieving breath. Mr. Ashford, 3 days ago I was begging agencies for cleaning shifts. Now you want to hand me your entire household. I want to hand it to the one person who's proven, for 6 straight years, that she's worthy of it, Jonathan said firmly. Double your previous salary. Full benefits. There's a cottage on the east side of the property, fully renovated. It's yours, if you want it. And whatever Lucas needs for school, for his future, is covered. Completely. Lucas's eyes went wide. Even the good crayons? The 100-pack. Despite everything, Elena laughed. A real laugh, wet with tears, the first one in what felt like forever. Jonathan smiled too, crouching back down to Lucas's height. Even the 100-pack, buddy. I promise. Elena wiped her face with the back of her hand, looking at her son, then at the man kneeling on her broken front step. I need a moment, Mr. Ashford. This is a lot. Take all the time you need, he said gently. I'll be right here. She stepped back inside, closed the door halfway, and pressed her forehead against the cool wood, breathing hard. 6 years of being underestimated. Days of being erased from her own name. And now, a chance to rebuild everything bigger than before. If your heart is racing right now, comment, take the offer below, and let me know what you'd do in her shoes. Because what she decides next changes everything for her and her son. She opened the door again. Jonathan was still there, patient, hands in his coat pockets, hope written plainly across his face for the first time since she'd known him. Okay, Elena said quietly. I'll come back. Jonathan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Thank you, Elena. I promise you won't regret it. I'm not doing this for you, she said, meeting his eyes steadily. I'm doing this for him. She looked down at Lucas, who was already bouncing on his toes with excitement. He believed in you when nobody else in that house would speak up for me. He's the reason we're standing here. Jonathan looked at Lucas with something like awe. He's a braver man than most adults I know. I'm not a man, Lucas said seriously. I'm 5. Everyone laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like the world had cracked open just enough to let a little light back in. The following months moved fast. Vivian's case went to the authorities. The stolen necklace recovered from the broker in Queens. Evidence airtight thanks to Daniel's investigation. She faced fraud and theft charges. Her name quietly erased from every reference she'd once used to intimidate the staff into silence. Her accomplices lost their jobs and their standing, one by one, as the truth kept unraveling. Elena moved into the cottage with Lucas that spring. She trained new staff with patience and fairness, the opposite of everything Vivian had built. She made it clear, from day one, that anyone with a concern could come to her directly. No fear, no threats, no retaliation. Slowly, the estate that had once run on silence and intimidation began to feel like a home again, for everyone who worked there. Jonathan changed too. He started coming home more. Actual weeks, not just stolen weekends between business trips. He learned the names of every staff member's children. He asked questions before making decisions. He listened, really listened, in a way he hadn't in years. 1 year later, The gardens behind the estate were full of life, sunlight pouring over the hedges as Lucas ran across the lawn, laughing, chasing a dog that had become the estate's unofficial mascot. Elena stood on the porch, coffee in hand, watching her son with a peace she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. Visitors who came through the estate now spoke of Elena with genuine respect, not as the housekeeper, but as the woman who ran the entire operation with quiet strength and fairness. Jonathan walked up beside her, watching Lucas play. "You know," he said, "none of this happens without him." "I know," Elena said, smiling. Jonathan crouched down later that afternoon as Lucas ran past, catching him gently by the shoulder. "Hey, buddy, I never got to properly thank you. You saved your mom's whole life with one phone call." Lucas shrugged, entirely unaware of the magnitude of what he'd done. "I just wanted Mommy to smile again." Jonathan felt something tighten in his throat. He looked over at Elena, who was indeed smiling, freely, fully, the way she hadn't in months. "Well," Jonathan said quietly, "you got your wish. A lie can destroy a life in minutes. Silence lets injustice grow in the dark. But real leaders verify before they judge, and sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the loudest truth." Elena's integrity was overlooked for a season, but it never stopped being true. And truth, given enough time, always finds its way back to the light. If the story moved you, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment telling me which part hit you hardest. Was it the phone call, the confrontation, or that final line from Lucas? And if you know someone who needs a reminder that the truth always comes out, share this video with them today.